There might be a lot of wind noise on this video. Anyway, I'm out here to somewhere special in Sedona to make a video about the indigenous spirituality. And I'm doing this because much of indigenous spirituality relates to connection to the land, so I thought I'd bring you somewhere special. Okay, hello everyone. I hope you can hear this. It's a little bit windy out here today. So I just wanted to share a little bit. Again, this is not going to be authoritative about indigenous spirituality. I'm going to talk about actually my experience in nature that I feel in some ways relates to, it seems to me to relate to indigenous spirituality, but that's only someone who was had that background in culture could actually tell me if it does. I do have Native American friends, and I've spent time hiking with them, and so I have some sense of how they see things. And the first thing I could say is all of this out here, when I've hiked with my Native American friends, is seen as being meaningful. In fact, every little thing that is seen out here, even things that seem insignificant to us, like a fly landing on a rock, wait for the wind, is seen as being meaningful. So, and that of course results from seeing everything as now in academia. We use the word animism, and I feel like that in the past has been used in a pejorative sense, so I don't want to use it. But certainly the sense is that all of this nature here, the plants, the rocks, animals, insects, are animated. So that equals, I suppose, being alive in a sense, but also more than just alive. I would say, and coin the term inspirited. Everything has spirit. So that then what happens in the interrelationship of all these things, the interrelationship of all these beings out here, including the rock people and the tree people, the interrelationship is meaningful. It's not inanimate matter interacting according to the simple laws of nature. So it's a very different perspective. And my own experience has been one of a growing sense of relationship to this land and to the what in the West we would think of as being the objects in this land, the elements of the land. But in an from an indigenous view, you might say the beings of this land. So again, the trees, the plants, and the rocks. And that is very counter to my scientific upbringing to have this relationship, because a relationship, of course, has to be two-way. Also, it wouldn't be a relationship, right? There has to be a two-way element to a relationship. It's something that's going in both directions. There's a communication, a sensibility that is two-way between things. And I've increasingly felt that in the time that I've been here. And one element of that is now in the West we have this psychological term that we call projection. If I would ascribe sort of feelings to a tree, then psychological terms in the West, we would say, well, you're projecting onto the tree. So one of the things that has happened for me in developing this relationship is I've had to throw out the idea of projection. So that at least in the sense of a deeper tuning in, there's something I'm feeling from the tree that belongs to the tree. And in some ways there are many sort of feelings, intuitions that sort of belong in the relationship. They belong in between me and the tree. They belong to this connection between the two things. So it's a case of suspending credulity, for me at least. Incredulity. Part of this relationship has to do with love. Now, I've observed in Native American ceremony, at least around here, that a good proportion of the ceremony, maybe 75%, involves expressing gratitude. So, for example, the medicine wheel ceremony, calling in the directions, a good proportion of it has to do with expressing gratitude to the beings in all directions, and to Mother Earth, Father Sky. And it's quite striking how in Indigenous traditions there's this sense of gratitude to the land, to Mother Earth. It's given them everything they need, and indeed, even in the West, of course, the Earth has given us everything. We haven't got anything that didn't really come from the Earth, or not very little. So I feel like maybe we could experience the same sense of gratitude. So along with that gratitude comes a feeling of love, I would say. And I have had this experience out here where I'm hiking and I experience a strong feeling of love. And at first coming from me. And then I started to have the sense that actually there was also a feeling of love coming from the land towards me. And at some point I started to realize that I couldn't actually tell which direction that love was going in. Maybe there was just this thing called love, but it existed between us. And it's sort of palpable, it's here. So that's my experience out there, and I feel like that relates to Indigenous spirituality, at least from what I've seen of it. In Sedona, Sedona has a large tourist industry because of its beauty, really. But there are these things here that are called vortexes or vortices, and people are coming to go to a vortex and feel what they feel. And many of us locals feel like the whole place is a vortex, but in the sense of the question of what is a vortex, I feel like the beauty here, or beauty anywhere, can penetrate, can open this channel of love between us and nature. And in Sedona, that whatever veil there is between us and usually experiencing that, I feel like that veil is thinner. So my description of a vortex to people is the veil is thinner. You can experience connection to something larger here more easily. And that appears to be true for a lot of people that come here. So make of that what you will. But I think that the land has power. And all land is special, I think, but not all equal. There are power places, and you'll see that in your readings. And I think this is one. This is a power place. Sedona is a power place, and so it draws all these visitors all the time here. And many of us just like to hike out and bask in it.
Hi everyone, back in the house, and
I just wanted to add to the video outside. I'm sorry about the sound. It's going to be probably a pain to listen to. Um, I wanted to first say that it's very clear that criticism of uh, my reporting of Indigenous spirituality and the video outside, and perhaps most of the reading that we have on it, is that it's dualistic. So it's there's with the talk of relationship between people and the land, and between beings of all different kinds, obviously makes the assumption of the existence of separate entities. There's a duality there. And so I just wanted to make a quick comment on that. There is, there is, and um, and this contrasts to the sort of what you might call the high mystical experiences that we're studying in the other traditions, mystical experiences that are of unity, that are the experience of oneness and non-duality. And of course, non-duality exists in Indigenous spirituality too, but it's not where, as far as I can see, it's not where they put the emphasis. They're not emphasizing that. The emphasis goes elsewhere, and into our kind of responsibility in relationship. Having said that, and then I'm sort of reporting in on my experience, and I want to acknowledge here that we do have an African shaman in the course, so I'm assuming that he's going to weigh in on all of this. But my own experience has been that this relationship can get very, very close, and so the relationship between oneself and the land or other beings in the land can become extremely close. And so the sense is of that you're dealing with kind of like actually more close than say a family would be. It's like these are your blood brothers and sisters, these trees and these rocks, and you're all from this, the assumption being that you're all from the same source. And so it's there's a sense of a great deal of a sense of intimacy and closeness, which I would say could approach at some point non-duality, in the sense that there's a deep recognition that you're all of the same stuff, you're all from the same source. So that's just a comment, and I wanted to finally wrap up this video with a talk about juniper trees. And this I feel like this aspect, these trees which exist in this area, there's 60 species worldwide. The highest tree line in the world is the juniper tree line in Tibet and whatnot. But what I've slowly discovered about juniper trees is that they're incredibly special, and they're pretty much always treated as sacred by Indigenous people. And starting, say, with Native Americans here, junipers, which have these little blue berries with seeds in. The juniper seeds are used to make necklaces, and they're thought to connect you with the ancestors in such a way that it ward off evil and evil spirits. The branches are used in purification, in ceremony, and in a rather similar way to how sage is used. In many tribes use juniper this way. In Europe, in Scotland, for example, in the going back a few hundred years, people would burn juniper seeds to ward off evil spirits and plant junipers outside their front doors to keep witches away, and going all the way back as far as Egypt, you find pharaohs buried in the sarcophagus with juniper seeds in their hand, and juniper seeds scattered throughout the sarcophagus. So and that's the number of cultures using juniper doesn't stop there, but I'm just giving you a few illustrations. So, and juniper is mentioned in the Bible several times. Juniper seems to be recognized as a sacred tree, and by disparate cultures who that have not been in contact with one another. And for me, this illustrates, or at least gives some evidence or indication of the kind of relationship that people can have with the beings of nature, in this case plants, that it can be of a very deeply intuitive nature, and that they could intuit their relationship to a certain plant, and therefore the gifts of that plant would become apparent to them simply in that connection. And so many of the plants, of course, have used it for medicines and different kinds of things, and these things are not discovered by trial and error; they're discovered by intuitive connection, intuitive relationship. So that really, the emphasis here is on this connection and relationship to nature and to the other beings of nature. So I guess those are my comments for Indigenous spirituality, and it's a weird time in the world, and I hope you're all doing okay with it. And we've got the rest of this week, and then the new age next week to wrap it up. So thanks for all of your posting and sharing and stuff. And doing the practices. That's been great. Oh, I wanted to say about the practice for Indigenous spirituality. You can do it just next week, or you can do it this week and next week, because the report isn't due until the final weekend, and there is an essay on the final weekend, just to give you a heads up. Okay, be well, everyone. Okay, bye.